Okay, my name is Dave Manship, M-A-N-S-H-I-P.
And could you say, hi, my name is?
Hi, my name is Dave Manship, M-A-N-S-H-I-P.
Mr. Manship, were you born in Muncie?
Yes, I was.
You were.
Mm-hmm.
When you were growing up, did you know of BorgWarner? Was it something that was big in the community?
Sure. Certainly, it provided livings to a lot of the gentlemen in my neighborhood. And I actually played Little League Baseball for Local 287. They sponsored Little League Baseball when I was a kid. So, yes, very much so. Very prominent.
Were you guys any good?
I want to believe that we were. It's been a long time. I don't remember any big trophies or anything, but had a lot of fun.
Were most of the kids that played? I've seen a picture of that. Most of the kids that played on the Union team, did they have connections to the Union somehow?
It was a mix. I'd say about half. You know, their fathers and so forth worked there, and that's how a lot of the kids became aware of that league, was through fathers and so forth that were Union members.
Did you have any family connections to BorgWarner?
I had cousins and so forth that worked there. My father worked for Ontario Corporation across town. So he did not work there.
And when did you hire in at BorgWarner? What did you do?
1980 as an assembly engineer, and basically I designed tools and machines for assembly operations. And my first major project was the T5 transmission. We built that line from scratch, and that transmission was used for lots of different applications. High-performance cars like the Camaro and the Mustang, the Turbo Thunderbird. But on the other end, it was also used on Chevette and the S10 truck. It was one of the first overdrive 5-speed transmissions in the marketplace.
In 1980, were you fresh out of school in engineering?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
A
couple years out. Yeah, a couple years. I certainly went there thinking I knew everything, and soon found out. You know, there was much more knowledgeable people there, and I learned from them.
Were the other engineers fairly, did they greet you openly? Were they nice to you? Did they?
Sure.
What was it like in management?
Very much a team spirit. It was department. You know, there were many departments, and at first, but as time went on, they consolidated many of those departments. So, yeah, it was a good experience.
Was BorgWarner in Muncie known for innovation? You said the T5 overdrive, that you guys really built that from the ground up. Were you guys known as innovators within BorgWarner?
Absolutely, particularly the automatic transmission before my time there. It was very innovative, and there were products that were developed when I was there, such as the automatic locking hub for four-wheel drive applications, transfer cases, shift on the fly transfer cases, and then I mentioned the T5. Also, marine industrial applications, the velvet drive boat transmission, and there was the PR1 series lift truck transmissions, hydraulic transmissions. So very innovative.
Now, you were there in kind of how long were you there? Let's establish that, I guess, first.
The first time, 9 years, 1980 to 1989, and then I came back to work for Dan Mills in 2003, worked there for a year and a half.
And while you were there, you said you worked on the boat transmissions, and that was outsourced, correct?
Yes, most everything was. Once patents run out, several things were outsourced. And the remaining product line was the transfer cases. 3 different basic models of transfer cases for GM, Ford large truck, Ford small truck. And that was the mainstay of the business for probably the last 10 years of the facility.
What were some of the good and bad aspects of working out at BorgWarner? What did you enjoy and what did you just despise?
I enjoyed learning. There was the skilled tradespeople there, you know, that went through apprenticeship programs and so forth, were very knowledgeable, and I learned a lot from them, and that was very beneficial to my career. I certainly liked working on the front end of technology. I started there in 1980, but in 1984, Dan Mills formed an advanced technology group, and that group had the charter to apply automation, basically, and high-level technology, and automation for us was robotics. So I enjoyed that very much. I enjoyed working for Dan. In that group, we were that group was separated off from the day-to-day responsibilities of production, and we were very much a development group to seek out new technologies and apply those in our plant.
Did you feel at odds working with computers and technology with other laborers? Presumably these robots would sometimes take the job.
You would think so, and at first there were problems, but once people come to realize that our intent was to apply them in such a way to eliminate the unpleasant jobs, the difficult jobs, the resistance was much less.
A little while ago, we off camera talked about how the union, you mentioned that the union not only affected the people that it represented, but it really had an effect on the whole plant. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. The union fought hard for better benefits for their people, better medical benefits, and many times the salary people followed. They enjoyed those benefits also, just to keep on an even keel with what the union wins were. So it was beneficial to us all.
How would you overall describe kind of relationship between labor and management?
I think it was good for the most part. You have exceptions on both sides. People that are difficult to work with, and it has nothing to do with whether they're union or company. But there were numerous trade classifications that made it sometimes difficult to get a job done, and engineers and salary folks weren't allowed to do anything, as far as touch a handle on a machine or anything like that. That made it particularly difficult sometimes. You'd stand and watch somebody else or wait for somebody to come do a job that you could easily do yourself. But that was just part of it, and I got used to it and learned how to work within those constraints.
How was BorgWarner for you as a family? Do you have a family? Are you married?
Yes, have one son.
Was that a positive work environment to work as a family member?
Well, very positive because of the technology involved. I was most fortunate again to work in the advanced technology group. So my son, he actually was born in '82, so he got to see as he was growing up some of the leading edge technology, and he also had a fascination with robotics as a result. There was one time that in one of our open houses, and he was 7 or 8 years old, and he came in and he conducted explaining how a robot cell worked, and people would come by, and this little 8-year-old guy was explaining to him what this robot did and how it worked. So I just stood in the background and listened to him, and so it was very special for us.
So he's kind of followed in your footsteps.
He did. For a while he was in robotics himself, and he's since changed careers, but it helped him get a footing in good paying job, and helped him start his family, establish his family.
Did you mentioned the open houses?
Mm-hmm.
Did BorgWarner have any other activities that it pushed, that it initiated to involve its workers, either family and with at work, or the workers out in the community?
Mm-hmm. Certainly. There was a lot of shops that provided parts and services for BorgWarner, and many times they were honored for their contribution to the company. But as far as the community itself, BorgWarner was very active in the United Way, a very strong supporter, and provided not only people and time, but a tremendous amount of revenue to that organization. And a spin-off of that is the YMCA and YWCA organizations. And they were very active in supporting those two facilities, And there was, I think it still exists, I'm not sure, but there was a corporate challenge, whereas the Y sponsored athletic competition for the workers. So there was, amongst the city, there was friendly competition amongst the different companies, and you were representing your company in these competitive games, and that was a lot of fun. That involved the community, and we got to see our, our competitors across town at Chevy Muncie were also friends, so that put us in a situation where we could, have friendly competition and, interact a little more than we normally would.
And you mentioned Chevy that it closed down several years before BorgWarner. Can you describe how the overall kind of economic landscape in Muncie has changed from the time you hired in 1980 to now?
Well, certainly in decline, sad to say. Both those facilities, BorgWarner and Chevy Muncie, provided thousands, literally thousands of good-paying jobs, and those just aren't there. Many of the people that worked at both those facilities went there right out of high school, and were able to make a good wage and support their family with a high school education, or some not even having high school education. Not everyone is cut out to go to college and go to university and get degrees and so forth. So it provided the ability for people to make a decent wage just right out of school. And I thought that was a tremendous benefit at the time. Those opportunities just aren't available. It seems to be polarized now. You have the very low-end service, low-paying jobs, and the very high-end professional jobs. And that middle class that I grew up with is struggling right now.
What do you kind of see in Muncie's future? Do you think things like this Bravini wind plant, do you think that's going to be part of the solution?
Absolutely. Yes, I think so. Magna, who I work for now, we just were awarded an electric car project. So it's my opportunity to work on green projects, but definitely that's where the future's at. And facilities are going to have to maintain advanced technologies. Like at Magna, we do a lot of laser welding, which is a specialized function. It's going to take companies with those type of specializations to survive the current economic situation. You've got to have some kind of competitive advantage and be working towards something that's good for the overall good, and which is certainly the green technologies now.
What do you think the main reason was the Muncie, or the BorgWarner in Muncie lost its competitive advantage?
The patents ran out, and that meant anyone, particularly third world countries, China, Japan, even the developing countries like India, could make our products at their labor rates without significant engineering development, because the product is already mature. Since the patents didn't protect us from disseminating that technology, they could take that technology and then had our products in hand. And we would call it after the fact engineering. It's real easy to do something a second time and much lower cost. And we just couldn't compete with that.
I'm wondering if you could take me through kind of a normal day back when you worked at BorgWarner. How much interaction did you have on the shop floor? How much were you in kind of the office area? What did a typical day consist of? And I know you probably did different jobs.
It went in phases. We used to joke about it. You would conceptualize, design, purchase, build, implement, start up, train, debug, and then start all over again on different projects. And that's pretty much how it was. So it went in phases. But later in my career there, I was on the floor a lot because our equipment was getting older. There wasn't a lot of money available to buy new equipment. So we did the best with what we had, and that required a lot of floor time.
How were your interactions with the workforce out there later?
It was fine. I had a lot of respect for them, particularly the line workers. There's just so much knowledge there that a lot of times goes untapped. But a lot of the things I learned were from people that worked on the line, ask questions, how would you do this? What's a better way to do this? And plus, like some of the weather we've been experiencing, the 90-degree days and stuff, it's very difficult, to stand at an assembly line, for example, or stand at a machine in that type of heat and do your job. So, I had a lot of respect for the people there.
In talking with some workers, we've heard several stories about goofing off. I just wondered, since you said you were on the floor quite a bit, was it kind of a high school atmosphere out there with pranks and jokes?
Small percentage. Yeah, there was. As I mentioned before, it doesn't matter if you're salary or union. There are just certain types of personalities, and there were some childlike activities, but for the most part, people were there to do their job and were very conscientious and did a good, put in a good day's work for their pay.
Is there any difference? Now you work at a non-union shop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Can you compare the two, working at a union shop versus a non-union shop?
The main difference is that I see is there seems to be more of a personal accountability of what's going on. There's the old adage, do your job or get fired. Well, now that applies in a non-union shop. People are required to work hard and be conscious of the quality of the product they're making, or they face termination. I mean, it's simple as that. And then I mentioned trade classifications before. Sometimes it got frustrating trying to get something accomplished. Well, in our plant, there's only one skilled trade classification. You basically work with the technician, and that technician has skills, mechanical skills, electrical skills, and they take much more responsibility for their work because they are the central point. And then the other difference is, as an engineer there, last couple of weeks I operated machines because we were building prototype parts. And that would just be unheard of at BorgWarner in a traditional union shop.
So would you say that there was less personal accountability in the union shop at BorgWarner?
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe. People really weren't required to look beyond their particular job or take interest in other things. I see at Magna that if a guy's working on a particular job and he sees a problem over on another job that he could help out with, they go do that and help support their fellow workers. It's much more of a unified collective effort, I think, there than what I've experienced past in a large facility where you're more involved with a micro aspect of your job as opposed to the overall well-being of the product, the end product.
So how would you describe the union's impact on productivity within a factory?
At first, as I mentioned before, when there was a lot of volume and so forth, productivity was very high. But as the volume and the demand for our products rolled off, productivity rolled off as well because people were concerned about protecting their jobs on both sides, salary and management. And the less product you had to sell, it just accentuated that problem in that I don't want to work too hard today because I worked myself out of a job. And a skilled tradesman, a toolmaker doesn't want to do a millwright's work because there's a chance that millwright could get laid off, so he was protecting his brother's job. I don't see that now. That's probably the biggest difference I see. However, at BorgWarner, if volumes would have stayed high and the demand for our products would have stayed high, you wouldn't have seen that situation. Everybody had been more concerned about getting their volume out and satisfying the customer's needs instead of protecting their own turf, if you will.
Now you were gone when the closure was announced in 2006. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
So as an outside observer, did you have any thoughts at the time,
Oh,
or
I
you
was,
saw it coming, or?
I saw it in decline. I was hoping that they would acquire new products that would allow them to sustain. But with most everybody that worked there, I was terribly sad. I thought it was devastating news.
Working at BorgWarner in Muncie, did you feel a certain esteem within the community?
Absolutely. I was very proud of the products we made, and our wages were high. We were top money makers in the city, contributed a lot to car dealerships and businesses and restaurants and shops and so forth. I was very proud to work there.
How do you think local residents viewed the company?
I thought they saw it as positive and saw it as a contributor also, to the overall good of the community.
Well, Dave, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. But at this point, I'd like to give you the opportunity to talk about anything you'd like concerning BorgWarner that maybe I didn't touch on that you feel like needs to be said about working there, or its closure.
Well, I'd like to. You ask about union management relations. I'll share a little story with you. In 1984-85, we put in the first industrial robot there, and it was more or less a computerized crane. It had 2,000-pound lift capability, had 14 foot of reach and 12 foot of lift. It was hydraulic actuated with a computer that controlled the motions and so forth. And our group took that project on. Well, back up a little bit. It was the charter of our group to find the really nasty operations and try to automate them. And this particular operation required the operator to stand in the middle of a circular conveyor, if you will. And you had 3 large milling machines. And these milling machines had pallets that held the part, that machined the part in a very exacting position. But these pallets weighed about 600 pounds. And the requirement of the operator in this cell was to pull this pallet out of the machine, manipulate it around to the next machine, push it in and start the machine. Well, in the summer, in the middle of this circle, there was very little air circulation. It was a very difficult job. So when we first took on the job to take the operator out of that situation and do it with this computerized crane, we got a lot of resistance from the operators because, here comes a robot, it's going to displace my job. Well, there was one guy that we worked with in particular during the day, near retirement, and he'd been there 35 years or whatever. And he had a lot of resistance of this robot going in and give us a lot of resistance. He wouldn't tell us a lot about his job, the intricacies so we could design this cell. Well, as time went on, he started realizing, well, I'm not going to have to push these pallets around anymore. And I'm going to get out of the middle of that circle where all this coolant, lack of airflow is. And basically, I'll just operate this machine. So as time went on, it went from him using his physical strength to operate this cell to using his mental facilities, making sure that the tools were replaced at proper intervals, that he was making parts to print, and that he was operating his robot and all the machines were maintained. And it took him out of that environment. Well, right after we finished this cell, we had an open house, and this gentleman come in on his own time and ran this cell so that he could demonstrate it to his grandchildren and so forth. And that was a high point for me, is his operating table. He had his granddaughter up on that table showing her, this is what Granddaddy does all day. And it's the same guy 6 months earlier that, was determined that we weren't going to be successful. And then as time went on, he shared in the success. It made his job better, more of a thinking job instead of a backbreaking job. So that was a particularly good experience for me. And it was early in my career. So that just kind of paved the way. And we used that as an example to other areas where we were implementing robotics, that we're not taking your job. We're just trying to make everything more efficient, make your job better, and use your mind instead of your back. and that was a good experience.
You know, one question comes up. It seems like in a lot of the interviews that I've done with guys who worked on the shop floor, they talk about either family connections that got them the job, or just a kind of a group mentality on the floor. You know, probably because of the union brothers and sisters. As management, did you feel that same sort of connectedness with other management guys, or did you? Because a lot of these guys had the mentality, I'm going to work 30 years here. Did you have that mentality? I'm going to work 30 years here. Or did you see more mobility because of degree?
I saw more mobility. I didn't really think I would retire from there. As I was there, I saw other opportunities that sparked my interest. So no, I didn't have that. I'll go there. I'd be a lifer. I didn't see that at all. As far as the family relationships, it was literally families. Several generations of families out in the shop. And in the early days, if your son needed a job, no problem. He was hired. There wasn't that family structure in salary ranks necessarily. I mean, not that it wasn't a good relationship, but it was more of a professional team kind of, you have your given role and here's how you contribute to the big picture. Out on the floor, it was definitely brother and sister, and that gets back to the protectionism that I talked about earlier, that as volumes went down, we lost products, people were concerned about protecting their job and the jobs of their brothers and sisters, and I certainly understand it, but it made things difficult.
Well, great. Thank you very much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Appreciate it.